Hello everyone, and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander Precon Upgrade Guide, the series where we take a look at Precon decks and bring them up to cut rate standards. My name is Grazzet, and today we'll be looking at the Divine Convocation Precon for March of the Machine and its face commander, Kasla the Broken Halo, which we'll be bringing up from its roughly $40 price point to an increased budget of $75 after upgrades. But before we continue, just a quick reminder that, at the time of uploading this, the channel's 10k subscriber giveaway is still going and has been extended to April 29th, in which one lucky winner will have the opportunity to win a $100 Urtet Remnant of Memnarch deck built by yours truly, as well as a plethora of accessories and upgrades for it. So if you're interested in signing up for your chance to win, be sure to check out the link above or in the description for the full build and how to enter. Additionally, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content and would like me to continue making more videos like this in the future. And if you're feeling particularly generous, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description to keep me caffeinated as I work on more of these builds. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see which Precon upgrade we'll be covering next. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. Kasla the Broken Halo is a 5/4 Angel ally with Convoke, Flying, Vigilance, and Haste that costs 3 and Jeskai and has the following ability. Whenever we cast another spell with Convoke, we scry 2, then draw a card. Breaking down her core stats, Kasla is sporting a hefty CMC, a slightly below average stat block for her cost, but more than making up for it thanks to her built-in evasion, haste, and vigilance, on top of Convoke allowing us to use our creatures to help pay for her cost, and an ability that tacks on free repeatable card selection and card advantage to every Convoke spell we cast for additional value. Diving a bit deeper into this ability, we'll find that, while it is quite simple, it's also incredibly effective. As it turns out, being able to continually scry 2 and cantrip easily allows us to dig through our deck for whatever we may need at any given time, whether it be lands or ramp to make sure our mana base doesn't fall behind, additional Convoke spells to generate even more draw, or enablers to allow us to get even more value out of our Convoke heavy build. And even sending 2 dead cards to the bottom and drawing 1 at random off the top is valuable, as that's 2 draw phases we didn't have to waste drawing those dead cards in the first place, ultimately making this ability a superb source of both card advantage and improved consistency. So, as we can imagine based on her Convoke-themed ability, Kasla is very much a Convoke Matters commander, aiming to get as much value as possible from our Convoke spells by turning them into scrying cantrips on top of their usual effects, and the base build does a very good job at reflecting that, including both new and old Convoke spells for our commander to empower, a decent amount of token generation to get us the bodies we need to convoke our spells in the first place, and support pieces for both to enable and empower them even further. That said, while the core build can certainly generate a lot of value in tokens, what it doesn't have are enough clear ways for us to win apart from creating a bunch of small token bodies and turning them sideways. So in this Precon upgrade, we'll primarily be focusing on improving the build's capability to close out games, specifically by adding in ways to weaponize our token production into damage or into outright win conditions, as well as adding in ways to search up those win conditions to help improve the build's consistency. Then, along with adding in some additional Convoke spells to proc our commander more often and additional token generation with a non-creature spell sub-theme to take advantage of our relatively low creature base, we're left with a build that can quickly establish wide token board states to help us convoke out our spells, then use those tokens to overwhelm our opponents through either burn, alternate win conditions, or, if need be, sheer numbers in combat. So let us planeswalk to Zendikar, where the Phyrexian Invasion led by the completed Nahiri has turned the plane into one unending battlefield, while the Royal itself turns the oceans, forests, and mountains of Zendikar against its invaders. The protection of its cities falls to its people, with the angels leading their defense. It is here we'll find Kasla, the battle-hardened veteran from the Battle of Zendikar, leading from the front, fearless and unyielding. She, just as her sisters, is no longer blinded by her halo to help the people of her plane, and even the most horrific of Elesh Norn's Phyrexian forces pale in comparison to the mind-bending Eldrazi abominations they faced in the past. So she'll stand and fight once more, shoulder to shoulder alongside the mortals of Zendikar, and together they will halt the apocalypse yet again. So, now that we have a better understanding of the commander and playstyle, let's take a look at the cards we'll be keeping from the base build. Beginning with our creature carryovers, we'll start off by keeping the most efficient token generators from the base build to ensure we have the wide boards needed to convoke our spells. For starters, we'll retain the Legends Kaikar Wind's Fury, who creates evasive bodies for us as we cast our non-creature spells, of which we'll be expanding upon in this build, that we can also sack away for red mana if we need to. The Locust God, who instead creates evasive tokens as we draw cards that can attack as soon as they come down if we'd rather have them deal damage than convoke our spells. And the legendary pairing Saint Traft and Rem Carolus, which, when combined with our sources of creature untapping, can get us up to 3 extra bodies per turn to convoke more spells or swing in with. Then, as our non-legendary token producers, we'll be holding on to Emiria Angel, who provides a steady stream of evasive bodies for us as we make our land drops, and Keeper of the Accord, who provides us both additional bodies on board and land ramp for us if our opponents are ahead of us on either, ensuring we never fall behind on whoever has the most for too long. We'll also be holding on to Nesting Dovehawk in this category, which may not produce tokens itself, but does populate the ones we already have in play to help us build up our board presence, while also growing into a bigger and bigger evasive threat as we get more tokens into play. From there, we'll be moving on to the kept convoke creatures we'll be using to proc our commander, with Flock Chaser Phantom staying in as a solid evasive body that can turn any spell into a convoke spell to allow our creatures to help cast it and generate additional value off our commander as they do so. Wildfire Awakener retaining its position as a scalable token generator whose tokens can inflict some serious burn to our opponents as we use them to convoke our spells or swing in with them, particularly when paired with untapped sources to get us even more uses out of them. Angel of Salvation carrying over as a solid evasive body that we can cast on our opponent's turns to proc our commander, mitigate damage, and give it pseudo haste. Seraph of the Masses holding onto its spot as another evasive body whose stats this time scale with our board states to inflict significant damage to our opponents thanks to our token production, and Venerated Loxodon preserving its position by providing a permanent stat increase to up to 5 of our tokens and or creatures, preferably evasive ones, so they can hit even harder. And finally, as our last 2 held over creature entries, Joyful Storm Sculptor will be keeping its spot as both a one-time source of tokens as well as a convoke payoff that tacks on AoE burn to our convoke spells to weaponize them against our opponent's life totals as we cast them, and Fallow Sage will stay in as well thanks to the repeatable draw it provides as we tap it down to convoke our spells, which again works well with untapped sources to get additional value out of it as we continue to use it to convoke. Then proceeding to our instant holdovers, our primary concern here will be holding on to even more of the convoke spells included in the base build so we can use them to trigger our commander's draw as frequently as possible. As such, we'll be holding on to Cut Short, Devouring Light, and Stoke the Flames, all of which are serviceable removal options on their own that our commander makes significantly more playable by turning them into scrying cantrips as well. Shatter the Source, which serves as another decent source of removal that's capable of hitting both front row and back row threats as needed. Artistic Refusal, whose combination of spell disruption and built-in card selection allows us to hamper our opponent's plays while simultaneously digging even deeper into our deck for our payoffs and win conditions. Meeting of the Minds, which provides on-theme no-nonsense card advantage for us. Ephemeral Shields, which provides us with a potentially manaless on-theme way to protect Kasla from removal, and a Chant of Vitu-Ghazi, which is not only a fog effect we can cast while being completely tapped out on a wide enough board state, but, if we use it in response to an Alpha Strike, has the potential to gain us a massive chunk of life as well to make bringing us down even harder in the future. Then with our Convoke instance covered, we'll wrap up our kept instance with the token producing Secure the Wastes, whose scalable flash speed token creation is a superb way for us to load our board with bodies to help convoke out our spells, and the removal spells, Swords to Plowshares and Wear and Tear, which may not contribute to the primary convoke and token game plan, but still provide excellent removal to disrupt our opponent's plays, making them well worth hanging on to. Then moving on to our retained sorceries, it's again mostly going to be convoke spells that we'll be holding on to in this category, with Temporal Cleansing holding on to its spot as a slow but solid source of non-destruction permanent removal that's capable of dealing with a wide variety of different threats, and Hour of Reckoning keeping its spot as an on-theme board wipe that dodges our tokens, which we can then immediately use to recast our commander or other convoke spells after the dust settles. And lastly, despite not being a convoke spell, Austere Command will slot in as our final retained sorcery entry, earning its spot by being a very modular wipe that we can make effective against a wide variety of different board states while minimizing the damage it inflicts on us as we use it. It's then on to our enchantment carryovers, which will open by hanging on to the convoke spell Conclave Tribunal, giving us access to yet another piece of on-theme removal to get additional uses out of our commander. Then, for the remainder of this category, we'll be focusing on retaining payoffs for our game plan, such as Whirlwind of Thought to provide us with repeatable card advantage as we cast our decently large selection of non-creature spells, Improbable Alliance to generate additional evasive tokens for us as Kasla and our other sources draws cards, and, as our last held over enchantment, Impact Tremors to weaponize our token creation by turning it into AoE burn and help close out games. Our held over artifact entries are then up next, in which we'll be exclusively holding on to the core build's better ramp and draw sources to help pad our core stats. On the ramp side of things, we'll of course be holding on to Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, both of which are superb mana rocks to help speed up and or fix our mana base to ensure we can get to our commander as quickly as possible, as well as Wand of the World Soul, which is a slower mana rock but more than makes up for it via its ability to grant any of our spells convoke, enabling all our non-convoke spells in the 99 to potentially be cast by our creatures and proc our commander. Then on the draw side of things, we'll be keeping Skullclamp in the build as a repeatable source of card advantage that makes use of our vast array of 1/1 token generators to turn said tokens into 2 cards whenever we may need to. And with our kept artifacts covered, we'll then move on to our Planeswalker carryovers, in which the superb reprint Elspeth Sun's Champion will be hanging on to her position as a repeatable source of token creation to help us convoke our spells, a power-based board wipe that most of our tokens should survive to retake control of the board, and, should we get to her ultimate, a powerful Anthem effect that not only empowers our wide board states, but also makes all our creatures evasive to enable easy alpha strikes and close out games. And finally, reaching our land-based carryovers, we'll start off with our kept mana lands, in which we'll be hanging on to Command Tower and Mystic Monastery, which tap for all 3 of our colors to improve our mana base's consistency, Exotic Orchard, which comes into play untapped and can generally tap for at least a few of our colors off our opponent's lands, Frostboil Snarl, Fury Calm Snarl, and Port Town, all of which tap for 2 of our colors and take advantage of our large number of basic lands to typically come into play untapped, Prairie Stream, which also taps for 2 of our colors and typically comes into play untapped thanks to our basics, Skycloud Expanse, which is a decent source of filtering to help fix for our 2 most common colors, Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Epiphany, and Temple of Triumph, all of which serve as even more dual lands that, while slow, make up for it with their ETB Scry 1 to improve consistency, particularly in the early game, and lastly, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which provide us with one last bit of fixing thanks to their land fetching. And then as our lone utility land holdover, we'll be retaining Care Keep as a relatively cheap source of tokens from our land slot to help build up our board with bodies to convoke our spells. And lastly, we'll be keeping 8 plains, 7 islands, and 6 mountains from the base build as our basics to round out our mana base. That leaves us with a final tally of 72 cards including basic lands that we'll be keeping from the base build, leaving us with 28 cards to replace. So, now that we've covered all the cards that made the cut from the core build, let's move on to our upgrades. Opening with our creature upgrades, we'll begin by axing some of the base build's less efficient token generators, namely Goblin Instigator, whose one-time token creation is a bit too low impact, Nadir Kraken, which requires mana to proc when we'd rather create tokens for free, and Chasm Skulker, whose token creation is a bit too death-dependent to be reliable in this build, and replacing them with a more functional and on-theme Third Path Iconoclast, Monastery Mentor, and Okiva Enigma Goliath, all of which take advantage of our large number of non-creature spells to passively generate tokens for us throughout the course of the game to help convoke more spells, proc our ETB payoffs, or simply swing in with. Then from there, we'll shift our efforts to add in some additional convoke creatures to the build to proc our commander more often, with Cloud of Fairies and Mist Meadow Vanisher both being cut due to being too flicker focused to find much use in this build, in favor of Knight Errant of Eos and Interdisciplinary Mascot, both of which can be convoked, possess bigger stat blocks, and whose ETB effects can help us dig deeper into our decks for more resources, and the bit too basic convoke creature Flight of Equinaughts being exchanged out for the newer Zephyr Singer, who's still evasive, only slightly smaller than its predecessor, significantly cheaper, and provides permanent evasion to whichever creatures help convoke it to enable them to more easily bypass blockers and get in for damage when we're not using them to convoke our spells. Then while on the topic of convoke, We'll also be swapping in some creatures with tap and untap effects to better take advantage of all the convoking we'll be doing, with Druger Hedgemage losing its spot, its ETB removal being very solid but also more at home in a Flicker build to get extra uses out of it. To open up space for Daring Thief, who serves as more on-theme removal, we can safely tap down with Convoke and lets us permanently trade our 1/1 tokens for our opponent's biggest creatures every time we untap him, and a lackluster tap-down Pinger Goblin Medics being benched to make room for Magda Brazen Outlaw, whose on-tap treasure generation is far more valuable to us to further speed up and fix our mana base, and, if we're able to stockpile the treasures she and our other sources generate, Magda also enables us to use said treasures to tutor up powerful artifact payoffs and win conditions for additional consistency. It's then on to refining our ETB payoffs, in which we'll be swapping out a very good draw source Mentor of the Meek in favor of Rumor Gatherer, who may not draw us as many cards but doesn't cost mana to activate when triggered and whose scry still helps us get to the cards we need as we create our tokens, and Suture Priest's ETB life gain being cut for Witty Roastmaster's ETB AoE burn, which effectively serves as an additional copy of Impact Tremors to help pile on the damage even more as our tokens enter play. And finally, as our last two creature upgrades, we'll be cutting the Mass Evasion granting legend Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive and the Graveyard Hating Angel of Finality, and putting in the tutors Drift of Phantasms and Moonblessed Cleric, each of which allow us to search up powerful cards to further improve our deck's consistency, the former by tutoring up the final build's surprising number of 3-mana payoffs and win conditions directly into hand via Transmute, while the latter can set up our top deck with powerful enchantments that we can later draw into with our commander as we cast a single Convoke spell. Then continuing on to our instant upgrades, the only changes we'll be making will be cutting two of our less useful creature entries to make room for more Convoke spells, with Spirited Companion's cantrip effect being swapped out for Transcendent Message's scalable draw to replenish our hands much more effectively at flash speed, and Banisher Priest and its low single target removal being traded for Clever Concealment instead, which can protect our boards from almost any type of wipe even if we're completely tapped out thanks to Convoke. Similarly, our sorcery upgrades will see us add in an extra Convoke spell as well by exchanging out Migratory Route's token creation for that of Triplicate Spirits, which still provides us with evasive tokens while proccing our commander and payoffs in the process, unlike its predecessor. Our enchantment upgrades will then see us add one last Convoke spell to our build by trading out the reasonably good token generator Path of the Ghost Hunter for the damage amplifying City on Fire, which literally triples our damage output as soon as it comes down to enable our tokens and damage dealing spells to burn through our opponent's life totals with ease. Then, to wrap up our enchantments, we'll be cutting Battle Screech's passable token generation and Village Bellringer's one-time AoE untap for the incredibly powerful enablers Prosperous Partnership and Jeskai Ascendancy, the former giving us extra bodies to initially help convoke our spells and later allowing us to tap down any of our excess creatures and tokens to generate treasure tokens, and the latter untapping our entire board whenever we cast non-creature spells, on top of making our creatures bigger every time it does so and providing additional card selection, making them individually very useful in this build, but, when they're both in play simultaneously, results in loopable treasure generation, AoE creature untapping, and AoE pump so long as we keep casting our non-creature spells, which, when combined with our commander or other draw sources, can easily allow us to dig through our deck until we hit a win condition to close out the game, or pump our board of tokens enough to one-shot all our opponents simultaneously. Then reaching our artifact upgrades, we'll almost exclusively be using this category to further improve our ramp package, with the slower Mana Rocks Fractured Power Stone, Cultivator's Caravan, and Commander Sphere being scrapped for the faster Azorius Signet, Boros Signet, and Izzet Signet for additional speed and fixing, the too expensive Rockkicker Elixir and the out-of-place instant and sorcery recurring Deluxe Dragster being shelved for Talisman of Conviction and Talisman of Creativity to add even more ramp and fixing to the build, and one of our spare mountains being replaced with Felwar Stone to add one last piece of ramp to our build and ensure we can get to our non-convoke spells as quickly and efficiently as possible. And as our last and only non-ramp artifact upgrade, we'll be swapping out the ill-fitting Impulse Draw spell Ren's Resolve for the much more on-theme token payoff Halo Fountain, which doesn't only create more tokens and draw cards for us as it untaps our creatures so we can use them to convoke more of our spells, but also serves as a reliable win condition for us that, on a wide enough board state of tapped creatures, can win us the game on the spot. It's then on to our new Planeswalker edition, in which we'll be cutting one of our excess mountains for the token-generating Saheeli Sublime Artificer, who serves as an additional non-creature spell payoff that gets us additional bodies on board as we cast them, as well as a means to temporarily turn one of the tokens she creates into a copy of any of our creatures or artifacts for some extra utility. Nearly at the end now, we'll be adding a single new battle entry to the build by turning one of our extra islands into the near-perfect entry Invasion of Segovia, whose front face immediately gives us 2 token bodies to convoke spells with, and whose back face, Kaiatis Sea Tyrant of Segovia, which we can get online with a single swing from our evasive and hasty commander, passively tacks on convoke to all our non-creature spells by simply existing to enable our commander and our game plan even further, and that's on top of untapping extra bodies for us to use to convoke even more spells with. And at last, reaching our land upgrades, the only change we'll be making will be terraforming the evasion-granting Rogue's Passage for the graveyard-hating Scavenger Grounds, which gives us access to a silver bullet to combat against graveyard-focused builds should we come across them. So, now that we've covered all 28 cards we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. This deck currently has 26 creatures including the commander, 13 instants, 4 sorceries, 7 enchantments, 11 artifacts, 2 planeswalkers, 1 battle, and 36 lands. Looking at the stats add matter to our game plan, we have 27 cards with Convoke or that can grant Convoke to our spells, 6 cards that care about casting Convoke spells or being convoked, 19 sources of token generation, 4 creatures with effects that occur when we tap or untap them, 2 cards that care about creatures entering the battlefield, 2 sources that can untap our creatures, and 3 tutor effects, leaving us with a solid number of convoke spells and payoffs to proc our commander, plenty of token generation to make convoking our spells easier, as well as creatures that gain us value as we use them to convoke our spells, alongside a handful of means to pile on the damage as our tokens and creatures enter play, enabling our creatures to convoke more spells by untapping them, and tutoring up our payoffs and win conditions to improve consistency. For general deck stats, we have 13 ramp sources, 9 card draw sources, 10 targeted removal sources, and 3 board wipes. Our draw being ever so slightly lower than normal, as our commander has more than enough draw herself to compensate as we cast our convoke spells, while our other stats fall within more typical numbers. Looking at our mana curve, we have 4 1-drops, 12 2-drops, 17 3-drops, 13 4-drops, 5 5-drops, 8 6-drops, 3 7-drops, and 4 8-drops, leaving us with a very heavy-looking lopsided curve that's actually much faster than it initially appears thanks to about a quarter of it being able to be convoked, in which we want to get our tokens and ramp on the board as quickly as possible to speed out Kasla, then use her to generate value for us as we cast our convoke spells, digging deeper and deeper into our deck until we find the means to weaponize our creature tokens into a win condition and achieve a victory. The final price of this build then comes out to be $75.31 after upgrades. This price does not include tax or shipping and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon was $40. The price of the cards was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For side grades, we can exchange out Daring Thief for Stony Brook Schoolmaster if we want to boost our token creation at the expense of our removal, swap out Saheeli Sublime Artificer for Complete the Circuit if we want to add another Convoke spell to our arsenal that empowers our instants and sorceries at the cost of reducing our token production, and, if we don't mind going slightly over budget, Nesting Dovehawk can be traded out for Approach of the Second Sun to add another alternate win condition to the build that Kasla's ability can help us get to relatively easily, though it will reduce our token game plan capability. Then for further upgrades, Emeria Angel can be cut in favor of Grand Crescendo, which offers decent instant speed token production as well as the means to keep our board protected against most types of removal and wipes. Saheeli Sublime Artificer can be tagged out for Intruder Alarm to give us access to another way to repeatedly mass untap our creatures so we can continue using them to convoke our spells. And Nesting Dovehawk can be replaced with Benny Brack's Zoologist, who serves as yet another convoke creature to trigger our commander and provides passive card advantage as we create our tokens. And finally, Chant of Itugazi can be sidelined so we can open its spot for Perforos, God of the Forge, who serves as another win condition for us that continuously burns our opponents as we create our token army, and, once our tokens reach critical mass, allows us to pump mana into him to power up our entire board and go in for the Alpha Strike, making him a solid damage dealer to both our opponent's life totals as well as our bank accounts if we want to run him, though he is not nearly as bad as some other cards I could mention. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. It looks like thanks are in order yet again, as all you fine folks that have been participating in the 10k subscriber giveaway and subscribing to the channel have managed to crack the 11.2k and possibly even the 11.3k subscriber milestones by the time of uploading this. So thank you all for the continued support and for helping the channel grow. And if you haven't signed up for the giveaway already, be sure to do so either via the card on this video or in the link in the description for a chance to win a $100 Urtet Remnant of Memnarch deck built by me, along with various unlocked accessories and upgrades for it before the deadline on April 29th. So, with the Divine Convocation Precon covered, the next Precon upgrade we'll be tackling will be for Tinker Time and its face commander, Gimbal Gremlin Prodigy. So look forward to a token-centric artifact upgrade for this build coming soon. And lastly, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this channel can't continue to grow without your support. And if you feel like showing your thanks by keeping me caffeinated while I make these videos, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description. And if any of you would like to support the channel in a different way, feel free to check out the other deck techs floating around my head if you'd like to see the latest builds, or click on the link above for a playlist of all the Cut Rate Commander episodes I've made so far. And with that, have a good one, folks, and stay safe.